And what's going on, everybody? And welcome back to Conversations with Jacob. This is the season premiere of 2026. And if you've noticed, which I haven't recorded in about 7 months or so because I've had some computer issues with the microphone and the camera, just been a whole big mess. But today, and we got a great guest for you today, and his name is Aaron Marcus. He's been a full-time actor for over 40 plus years with nearly 1,300 bookings. Uh, perhaps you saw him in the scene with Tom Hanks, being saved from the train station in a movie called A Man Called Otto. He began his acting career in a small market with no connections or understanding on what he needed to do to succeed. He spent years of doing things by trial and error, and Aaron decided early in his career that if he ever has success, he would help others avoid the difficulties and mistakes he made breaking into the industry. And that is why he has given over 800 workshops and spanning 3 continents. And Aaron saves 5 days each month and has helped hundreds of actors and models succeed in the industry by sharing his information with his private virtual coaching sessions. Oh, what you can you can visit his website, howtoactandmodel.com. And Aaron, and welcome to the podcast.
Hey, it's so great to be here and so glad that you got all your equipment fixed and you're up in podcasting again.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And then for people who don't know how you got started in acting and how did you get into it?
Yeah, so I have a different story than most people. A lot of people who've gone into acting, they knew at a very early age this is something they wanted to do. They did a lot of local theater work, and mine was kind of, I wouldn't say the opposite, very, very different. The shorter version is I was a full-time musician for 7 years. I dropped out of college to perform. Then I decided I wanted to be a physical therapist and went back to school again. And I was taking all the classes that scared me and that I avoided all my life. And I needed a part-time job. I met an actor. He told me what he did. He did mostly TV commercials. And I thought, boy, that's a perfect part-time job for a full-time college student. And so I started looking into it and I actually started getting some work as an actor. And I did that part-time for 2 years, once again, just as a way of bringing in some income, a side hustle job for me. And I was about to start applying to physical therapy schools because I took all the prerequisites. And I just kept thinking, I really like acting. This is really fun for me. And so I decided I wanted to give myself 1 year just to test it out, see would I like it? Could I continue to get work? Could I still live doing things as a self-employed person, no guaranteed income? And that's turned into a 40 plus year career.
So, unlike most people that get into acting, you didn't go through Broadway or theater.
Well, and that's a good question. When I first got started, I did some local theater. Now, meanwhile, I'm already an adult. I mean, I was like kind of like mid to late 20s. Um, and so, yeah, I started to do some theater. I thought that would be a really good experience for me. And so I did that for a few years. And then what I found was, and then my wife and I started having children. And I actually wanted to see my kids. And so I knew that theater was not going to be a good life for me. Uh, I just wouldn't see them. And it's also, I mean, look, it's really hard making a living as an actor, but to try to make a living as a theater actor, it's really, really hard. I mean, even people who've made it to Broadway, I mean, unless you are already a very famous actor and then you can get paid a lot of money, but even Broadway actors, considering, the few people who actually make it to that level, it's hard to really make a living easily, especially if you're living in New York, doing any kind of theater. So yeah, so I stopped doing theater and I started doing other things like TV commercials, Um, when I first started, there really weren't that many films happening in my area or TV shows happening. Later on, there were, but so I was doing, there are things called training films. And a lot of people don't know anything about them. Actually, I enjoy them. I've done hundreds of these things. They're called training, industrial, or corporate films. And I used to get a lot of work from government agencies like IRS, the CIA, TSA, DIA, which I never even knew existed, Defense Intelligence Agency. And I had to actually get a secret clearance to do one of their films. So I used to do a lot of those things. And there's also something called commercial modeling, which a lot of people don't know anything about. As soon as people hear about modeling, they immediately think of fashion. Commercial models, I wouldn't say it's the opposite because there are some beautiful commercial model women and some really handsome commercial model men. I don't fit into that category, but commercial models are sometimes beautiful, sometimes just regular looking people that you see in ads in magazines, newspapers, brochures, on billboards and posters, sides of buses. And you will find commercial modeling work virtually anywhere throughout the country. And I used to get a lot of commercial modeling work.
Now, did you ever imagine that you would be doing this in 40 some years later?
No, never, never. Um, Once again, I just started off because it seemed like it was fun, seemed like it would be interesting, and it's hard work. I can tell you, most of the people I know don't do this on a full-time basis. Either they're full-time students, they have a full-time job. Some people are retired and do it, but most people are not doing it for the income because you just never know what's going to happen from day to day. And it can be, especially if you're living in a small town, secondary market, if you're not living in New York, LA, Chicago, Miami, or even Atlanta now. So, but there's work around there. You just have to know how to find it, and you have to have the right materials, and you have to be prepared so that when situations come up and you're asked to audition, you have the skills to pull off great auditions.
Now, and what does success look like to you when you were just starting out?
I'm sorry, what did what look like?
The question is, what does success look like to you when you
Oh,
began starting out?
yeah. So success for me when I was starting out was number one, could I just book jobs? That was number one. That would be successful. I never see, it's funny. There are some people in this world, and I wish my brain worked this way, but it just doesn't, where they can put together a plan and they will say, okay, and it doesn't have to be with acting. I'm just talking about anything in the world where, okay, after a certain period of time, I need to be earning this much money. And they can put a number on it, or I have to book this many jobs or have, these many agents or whatever it is. I've just never worked like that. And I've always just gone by feel and intuition. And so I knew that success for me was being able to get jobs, being able to make money doing it, and probably most importantly, was I still enjoying it? And could I live a life knowing that there are so many unknowns in the industry? And but I guess it's that way for anybody who's self-employed. Look, you can be a plumber and you're self-employed. Who knows if you're going to get work? Hopefully you do, but you just never know. So to me, that's what I was thinking of as success. I never imagined I'd be in movies, I'd be working with Tom Hanks, like three Academy Award winning actors and other projects. Never.
Now, you've booked nearly 1,300 roles. So what do most people misunderstand about what that actually takes?
Yeah, you know what? You're the first person who's ever asked me that. I love that question. Sometimes people will say, "Oh yeah, I saw a guy on this TV show. He just said like three or four words and that was it." People don't know how difficult it is to get booked in anything. And I'll throw some numbers at you so your viewers can have a better understanding. Look, there are no specific numbers, but I've spoken to enough casting directors. As a matter of fact, it's interesting. I'm going to be talking about this. I have a YouTube channel, and every week I upload a new quick tip video. And this is a topic that's going to be on next week's video. So it will vary from job to job and role to role, but it's not unusual for one single role for a casting director to receive anywhere from 200, 500, or over 1,000 headshot and resume submissions per role.
Oh,
Out of all of those, and once again, these numbers will vary a little bit, but maybe 30 people will be invited to read. So out of possibly 1,000 or more people, only 30 get a chance to
yeah.
audition. Out of those 30, one person books the job. So it's incredibly difficult to book anything. And, something else that a lot of people don't understand, it's not like the Olympics. Look, we've got the Olympics coming up soon. And so it made me think of this. It's not like the Olympics where if you're doing an ice skating routine, whoever does the best will get the gold medal. Whoever has this perfect program, they're going to get a gold medal. It's very different with acting. Look, out of those 1,000 people, probably over 900 are giving really good auditions. Out of those 30 who get, called back, or 30 who get a chance to audition for it, probably 29 are really good auditions. And so it's not a matter of who's the best, who gives the greatest read. It comes down to factors that we have absolutely no control over. And, everybody's audition is fine. And then it comes down to who they think fits the role the best. And here's a perfect example of that. There was a television show. Actually, it was a groundbreaking show because it was the very first streaming show. It was on Netflix and it was called House of Cards. And I auditioned for that show 14 times over two
Oh,
years. Never booked a role. Over 2 years, 14 auditions. And it wasn't because they didn't like my read. Casting directors don't bring actors back a second time unless they really liked what they did. But for whatever reason, I wasn't the perfect person. Now, it just so happened the 15th audition, I booked a recurring role. So you just never know what can happen, in those situations. But, what's really important for people to understand, it's very difficult, and we have full control over our audition. We have no control over who gets booked. So, and that's why you can't take things personally. I'm not saying don't feel bad if you didn't get a role that you really wanted. We're human, it happens to me as well. But it's not a personal statement about the person themselves.
now it kind of goes into my next question. And should somebody do what you did and kind of audition 14 times, or should they kind of do it different?
Yeah, well, and I can tell you, there are actors who I meet who will tell me, look, I've already auditioned for this casting director 5 times. It might be the same project, maybe different projects. And they start thinking, well, apparently the casting director doesn't like what I'm doing. And honestly, I don't want to audition a sixth time because I feel like I'm wasting my time. If they really liked what I did, I would have gotten hired. And that's just not reality. That's not how the industry works. And that's why people really need to understand that, you might be too tall, you might be too short, your body might be in too good a shape, maybe you're not in good enough shape, maybe you're too attractive, you're not attractive enough. Maybe if you're reading for one of the kids and the stars of the show or the parents, maybe you don't look enough like the parents to look like you're really their kid. Or, and I even heard this one time, not personally, but a friend of mine who was involved in a casting, and it was for a feature film. They called a woman back. meaning they saw the initial auditions and they really liked maybe like three people, and then they called those three people back to finally decide who they're going to cast. She came in and they had her read again, and she left, and everybody turns to the director and says, "Wow, she was great." And he goes, "Yeah, she was phenomenal." And they said, "So you're going to offer her the contract, right?" And he said, "Nah, I can't do that." They said, "What? Why? I thought you thought she was great." Oh, she was phenomenal, but she wore the same perfume as my ex-wife. I just
Right.
back too many bad memories. So you just never know why people get chosen. So like, yes, your audition has to be really good, but then it's out of your control.
So basically, if someone goes into audition and they said that that person's good and they give them good reviews, and then that could always change and they can always pick a different person.
Yeah, well, first of all, and it's interesting. So in today's time period, not to say it never happens, but in today's time, most people don't go into casting directors' offices like we used to, and everything is a self-tape. You shoot things most of the time at your home. That's what I do now. I wouldn't use this as a background for my auditions. I actually have a screen on the other side of my home office. It's just too cluttered back here. Um, I like doing my quick tip videos here. I like being interviewed on podcasts. It just gives it a more personal kind of feel. But even when I used to go into casting directors' offices, and by the way, I just want to make it clear, I'm not saying it never happens. There are some casting directors that will still bring people in, but not like it used to be. Um, Every casting director is different. Some of them will give you notes and say, "Hey, try it again, and why don't you take the character in this direction?" Because the casting director knows a lot more about the project and what's taking place than we do. We're given, a page, 2 pages, 4 or 5 pages tops, um, to read. And so we're basing decisions on what we want to do with that character off of some specific information, but not everything. And if you are given notes, don't start thinking, "Oh, they hated what I did." Once again, they're not going to bother giving you notes and asking you to read it again unless they really liked what you did. They just want to see something different. Sometimes, and this is funny, I did a quick tip video about this once. I have found, and there's no scientific proof about this, but I have found the more complimentary the casting director is about my audition, the less chances I have of booking the job. If I used to hear, "Aaron, that was phenomenal. Hey, are you available these dates? That was great." I could kiss that job goodbye because I know I'm not getting it. Most of the time when I would book a job, I'd go in, I would read, and they'd say, "Thank you very much. Next." Then I go, all right, now I'm being considered. So yeah, you just never know. But the important thing is if you are given notes, that's a good thing.
Now, now, have you ever came across a director who told you to make the character like your own, or kind of go with, kind of like change it up a bit?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that's not uncommon at all. And look, typically a director is not going to say, "Please just read it like this and then do the line read." It's not like that. But the director might say, "Hey, look, hey, why don't we just try something else? Maybe, you're not so afraid of this person in this scene." Okay, yeah, let's play with that. And, I never take things personally. I always go in very prepared, but I also know that things might change. And who knows, depending on how somebody reads back to me, I might change my direction also. I might think, "Oh, that does take it in a different direction. Let me just try it and see what happens." So, yeah, things change all the time on a set.
Now, what kept you going in the early years, and what kept you going in the early years when bookings weren't guaranteed?
Yeah. Well, fear is a good is a good thing to keep me going. The other thing was it's not like I had something else to fall back on. It's not like I had a degree, a college degree, where I could say, "Okay, well, if this doesn't work out, then I'm going to be a teacher, or I'm going to be computer scientist, or I didn't have anything else. I'm not that smart of a guy, and I didn't have that many other skills. So I thought, I got to make this thing work. And that is one of the reasons why I worked as hard as I did. I mean, like sometimes when I think about it now, I mean, it's amazing just how much effort I would put into things. To give you an example, when I when I felt like I was ready to hit the New York market, and I'm about, depending on how you get there, it could be anywhere from 3.5, 4.5 hours for me to get to New York one way. After about 4 years of working in the Maryland, DC, Virginia, Philly market, and then moving my way up to Jersey, when I felt like I was ready for New York, I would go to New York, and they're called go-sees. A go-see it's the term for the audition for a commercial model. And what happens is you go into a photographer's studio or a casting director's office, and they'll take a couple of pictures of you and you're seen. So you go and you're seen. So they call them go-sees. So I would spend, 4.5, maybe 5 hours getting to New York, then either walk or take a subway over to the photographer's studio or casting director's office, sign in, wait to be called in, spend 2 minutes taking pictures of me, saying goodbye, and then doing another 4.5, 5 hours getting back home. I did that for decades. And so I knew that New York, it's the biggest commercial modeling city in the world, and I was successful at it. And if I wanted to continue, I had to do that kind of work. So, yeah, fear and not having things to fall back on, and also just knowing that I've got to work unbelievably hard to make it happen. And so that's what I've been doing.
Now, was there a moment in your career that you thought about quitting?
Hmm. That's also a really good question. I remember once getting fired from a show. I wasn't feeling like I was ready to quit, but I was so angry. It just, it felt so unfair. And then I just came to learn that sometimes life isn't fair and those things happen. And it was nothing that, I did. I was, dealing with somebody crazy and, those things happen. So, no, I never really had those thoughts of quitting. There were times where things were really hard. There were some times where I would think, why in the world didn't I become a physical therapist? Absolutely. Those things would run through my mind sometime, but never seriously thought of quitting.
Now, and how much has the industry changed since you started?
Oh my goodness. Oh, that could be an entire book, how things have changed. I mean, everything from, look, we used to have personal relationships with agents. When I first started going to New York, I thought it was the best commercial modeling agency in the city, in New York City. They had a room just for commercial models. Well, just for us. I mean, it was a commercial modeling agency. They had a telephone for us because this was way before cell phones. It's before internet stuff was really happening. And if we needed to make phone calls, we could. We would sit there. We could walk out in the other room, say hi to the agents. I didn't want to spend much time taking them off the phone and doing work, but we had a really, personal kind of relationship. And that world has changed. Even getting an agent has changed. There were times you could knock on an agent's door at their office and say, "Hey, I'm Aaron Marcus. Here's my, headshot. Here are my photos. Love to talk with you about representation." That doesn't happen anymore. Then they would leave a box outside of their office door, and you could drop off things and they would take a look at it. If they were interested, they would contact you. There are a lot of agents who don't even have offices anymore. They just work out of their home because it's gotten too expensive. Everything is done electronically. and you'll get a text message saying, here's an audition, and they'll send you the information and you submit it. And it's gotten less personal. Uh, I haven't been in a casting director's office since the beginning of the pandemic, so we're talking about like 6 years now. Um, it's a little bit more isolating. And even things like with commercial modeling, it's a little bit harder to get commercial modeling work because of things like stock photography, and people are just using stock photography. Actually, here's another example, and this just kind of blew me away. I mentioned before about these training films. And I was on Instagram, and I have an Instagram presence there. It's just Aaron R. Marcus. And you can see tons of videos there as well. You can follow me there. And I saw this ad that popped up, and it was this woman talking into the camera saying, "Hey, look, if you have a company and you want to put together training films, I'd be a perfect person that you can hire." So at first I was thinking, oh, maybe there's another actor. This is how they're promoting themselves. As it turns out, and as I watched it more, these were all AI characters. And they were saying, yeah, you can hire me, or here's a whole slew of other people who can be your spokesperson that you can hire for training films. All you have to do is choose which character you want, upload the script, and that's it. So, yeah, the world has, well, it's not only the acting industry and the modeling industry, the world has changed, but yeah, those are a couple of areas where things have changed dramatically.
Now, speaking of AI, and do you think and that will eventually be involved in, I guess, movies, which I know it's,
It already has.
yeah,
Oh,
it
yeah.
has, yeah.
Yeah, it already has. Matter of fact, there was a an AI character, and there were a number of big agencies who were bidding to sign her. And I think the agency that decided to sign her, they backed off of it. I think there was a lot of complaints about it. But yeah, I mean, look, there are scenes like if, instead of hiring 1,000 extras, you can just create AI characters and put them in there. I think there was a movie not that long ago that was all AI. There were no real people in it. Will they completely replace actors? I don't think so. I hope not. I don't think so, though. I mean, we bring something to the table that I think even a designed AI character can't. But yeah, it definitely is having an impact on us.
Now, what separates actors who books once from actors who book back to back?
Yeah, okay. Like you mean like with the same company, the same director, or just people who book all the time?
Yeah, just people who books all the time.
Sure. So well, a couple of things. Um, in some ways, the way that I view myself as an actor is I'm a salesperson. And like with any salesperson, uh, most of your business, I guess depending on what you're selling, is going to be repeat business. And so you sell a product that's really good, that people like, that helps them, it fits a need for them. Well, of course, they're going to buy it again. So to answer your question, the person who might get one booking and then never work again, or people who work steadily, I think a lot of it is the fact that, number one, you're really good at what you do. And in some ways, just as important, you are reliable, you are professional, you show up on time, you are prepared, you don't create problems on sets, you don't battle with people. You, you basically you fill a need that a director has. And you do that, and it's a good experience. And word spreads. I mean, it's a big world out there, but in some ways it can be very small. And and not to say you don't hear about stars who do crazy things on sets, and it's problematic. And they still get hired because they're stars and they're going to bring in money. But for matter of fact, here I'll tell you this one really quick little story. I remember talking. I was working on a TV show, and I was talking with one of the producers. And he was just talking, we were talking about people who get written off of shows. And he said, it's really interesting. He said, typically the stars, they're easy to deal with and they will stick around. The people who are just getting started, they're easy to deal with. They're so excited about being there and they are very easy to be around and work with. It's the people in the middle. Those are the ones that get killed off. Their characters get killed off because they're in this in-between stage where they're much more than just beginners because they've had experience, but they're frustrated. They feel angry that they haven't gotten to that top, that A-list level yet. And they're the ones that can cause problems on a set. And matter of fact, because there was a guy, and I'm not going to mention any names, and his character was killed on the show and the guy was creating problems. So it didn't surprise me. So I think for people who work a lot, yeah, it's having the skills, but also being easy and good to work with.
So basically, if a actor is causing problems on the set and they get killed off.
No, well, it's not that simple. It's not that simple because look, if you are a star and you're bringing in money and the crazy thing is maybe not so much for TV shows or films, let's say commercials. Sometimes I wonder, why do you have to bring in these A-list actors, make millions of dollars from these commercials? And I think part of it is that maybe people from the advertising agency or the people who own the product that's being sold, they want to be around that star. And this will give them an opportunity to be on the set while they're shooting it. And if there is an actor that acts out and does some crazy things, it's a funny story that they can tell their friends, oh, yeah, I was on the set. You wouldn't believe it. This guy, he threw his glasses. And so sometimes people enjoy that. So, but when you're at that kind of level, sometimes you can get away with things that people on a lower level simply never could.
Now, what's one small habit that has a huge impact on your career?
I'm sorry, one small what that has?
The question is, what's one small habit that has had a huge impact on your career?
One small habit?
Yeah.
So I think I guess this would be it. Um, I find that I work much harder when I'm not booked on a set than when I am working on a set. To me, that feels like vacation.
Yeah.
The other stuff feels like the real work. So for me, I guess my habit is I work unbelievably hard at trying to get work. And so I made sure, every day I've got a list of things to do. And even, look, for some people, working out of their house is really tough because there's so many distractions. For me, that's never been an issue. Um, I know that I've got to get these things done. I either have a whiteboard or I just write things out on a piece of paper and I go down the list. So my habit is making lists, um, figuring out what needs to get accomplished or at least started that day and doing it. And I'm really good at doing that. That's my habit.
Now, and what role or booking meant the most to you?
Yeah, that's interesting. It's almost like, which child is your favorite? Um, Look, there have been a lot of jobs that I've loved for different reasons. And not necessarily for the money. I mean, some of them were very low paying kinds of jobs. I can mention just a couple things that jump. Um, I remember once booking a job, and this was interesting. Went up to New York, and I knew it was a big job, and I knew they were shooting this um, in three different cities. They were going to hire couples, a husband and wife, and each couple would be working in a different city. One was New York, and the other was in Dallas. And I'll tell you the third one in a second. And I have never experienced this before in my life. I went up to the photographer's studio, and there was a line that went out his door, went down 2 blocks. There must have been over 1,000 people. And I'm just sitting there and I'm just thinking, what was my agent thinking? Every person I saw, the men were incredibly handsome, the women were beautiful, the people I was standing next to in line, they were talking about these movies they've done and these famous directors and actors they've worked with. And at that time period, I was thinking, it's like, well, I just did a commercial modeling ad for hemorrhoid cream or something like that. And it's like, what am I doing here? And the crazy thing was, I booked the job. I was one of the three couples, and I was flown to Hawaii to do the job. And what I found with that was, and once again, it wasn't so much the money. It wasn't like I was making a fortune. I mean, it was a good paying job, but just you just never know, and you work hard. I actually saw people leave the line who just said, "This is crazy. I'm not waiting, this long to be seen." Now, those people probably lived in New York, so it wasn't that big of a deal. But even if I lived in New York and didn't commute, there's no way I would have walked out of that. It's like I'm here, and this is a possible job, and I want to learn from it. But sometimes working, it's not so much that they were stars, just working with some well-known actors. Um, it was just a phenomenal experience. Even like you had mentioned, Tom Hanks. So I had just this wonderful opportunity to work with him and spend some time with him. And he's just such a humble person, such a nice man. Um, and as a matter of fact, I'll even share the story because sometimes you see well-known people and you wonder yeah, but what are they really like? They might be monsters off the screen. Besides just he would walk over and shake people's hands, all the extras, and thank them and stuff. It was cold for those days. But I remember saying to him, as we were just sitting in chairs waiting for the next scene, I mentioned to him, look, I just want to thank you so much for creating such a warm atmosphere on this set. Because for people who don't know, on a movie, unlike a television show, on a movie, the director is king or queen, depending on who's directing it. And if they are incredibly nice, or it could be the star, but if they are incredibly nice, it filters its way down. And the first assistant director will be nice, all the production assistants will be nice. And then it's just the opposite also holds true. If you have somebody really nasty on top, that filters its way down. He created such a nice atmosphere. And so when I thanked him for doing that, he looked at me almost like I was crazy. He goes, Aaron, he goes, we're all on the same team here. We all have one job, and our job is to make something great. But you know what? He's right. And so for those people who might not have seen A Man Called Otto, there was one part besides falling off of the train platform, like 8 feet down on the train tracks. They created snow. My face is sitting in snow on metal, steel rods for the train tracks. And I don't have any special equipment, waterproof suit underneath my regular suit. I was wet. It was incredibly cold, very uncomfortable. And I just kept hearing his voice in my head. He goes, "Hey, we're all here for the same reason, just to make something great." And I just thought, he's right. So I would say that was, just working on that, spending time with him and his wife, Rita Wilson. She was one of the producers. She was incredibly kind and generous as well. And so that was a wonderful experience also.
Now, and how did you book that role?
So Um, it was all shot in Pittsburgh, and I have agents in different markets. One of them is in Pittsburgh. They submitted me, I read and booked the job. And something I've never experienced this before. The agent said, "Well, of course, they're going to have a stunt double for you." And I expected that because this guy falls 8 feet off the train platform onto the tracks. And I watched this guy work. He was phenomenal. He was a well-known stunt actor. And later in the day, uh, I was asked, would I be comfortable trying it? And I think the reason why they asked, I didn't quite get it at the time, but I think it just had to do with editing. And so it looks smoother and it could be one camera movement. If you see me walking to the edge, having a heart attack and falling over as opposed to having to cut it because you can't show the face of the stunt double and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, so I had a very quick meeting with the stunt coordinator and a couple of the stunt actors because I'd never done anything like that before in my life. And you had to be, I had to be incredibly careful because look, you can do some serious damage. You can get paralyzed, if you don't fall properly. And I'm a pretty good athlete, and so they told me very specifically how to do it, how to land, where to land, and all that. And they were down by the tracks as well by the padding just to make sure that I hit it and I didn't bounce off and then hit the tracks face first. So yeah, that was it was an amazing experience to do it. And they wound up keeping my version in the
Oh,
movie.
wow. Now, and what do you think is the biggest mistakes and the actors make today?
I think it's probably the same one that people have always made. And I'm able to say this pretty easily now. Excuse me, but this took me a long time to figure out. You can't take things personally in this industry. Um, when you don't get the agent that you wanted to get and you get rejected, you do the audition and they don't want you. And by the way, most of the auditions we go on, we're not going to get. And sometimes you might hear some actor saying, "Oh, I booked 97% of all the auditions." I find that hard to believe. And if it is true, then wow, that's unbelievable. Maybe the person has only had two auditions in his life and, something like that. It's hard to book, as we talked about earlier. Um, s- um, I'm sorry, what was your question again?
Um,
'Cause I was heading in there.
it's all right. The question was, what's the biggest mistake you see
Mistake.
actors
Yeah, yeah,
make?
yeah, yeah. I'm sorry. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Because I started heading in a slightly different direction. So the biggest mistake is so when you don't book things, you can't take it personally. It's not a statement about you, which is very easy to do. Look, if I'm a salesperson and I'm selling Mac computers, well, I could knock on somebody's door and say, "Hey, I'm selling a MacBook Pro. Are you interested?" And they might say, "You know what? I really like PCs a lot more." I go, "Okay." And then you go on to the next. It's nothing personal. This is what they wanted. That's all. Same thing for us. But the difference is somebody's not saying, "I don't want this product." They're saying, "I don't want you." And a lot of people take it personally. And it's a dangerous place to go because these are not, look, you're a good person, you're still a good person, whether you book anything or not. And I can also tell you another huge mistake, because that's a really good and an important question to ask. For people who only feel good about themselves based on their success, because for people who only feel happy and feel good about themselves when they are getting all these bookings, starring in a show, and you've got this whole group of people around you, these yes people who are just saying yes to you, that's a dangerous place to be at because at some point that success, that notoriety is going to start to fade. And once that starts happening, and people stop asking for autographs. People stop giving you, the best seats of the restaurant. And you just become a regular person. Oh, yeah. Hey, weren't you on a TV show 15 years ago? Those are the people who have a lot of serious issues because they built everything up on based on how well they've been. So I just think it's really important to surround yourself with people that you trust, people that you love, people who care about you, people who are willing to say, "Hey, you're being crazy here, stop doing this stuff." That's really important. And to always remember the people who helped you out along the way. So I guess that's my answer to
All
that.
right. All right. Now, and how do you handle rejection after doing this for so long?
Yeah. Well, like I was saying, it's not a personal thing. Apparently, I just wasn't the perfect fit. And the way to try to take a positive spin out of not getting the job is by knowing that this gave me an opportunity. to introduce myself to a casting director or maybe even a director. Who knows who actually saw it, whether it went up the ranks a little bit. Um, and that is really important. There's no better way to introduce yourself by letting somebody see your audition, your acting skills. So, yeah, maybe I didn't book this one, but who knows? This is a film. Maybe there'll be a lot of other parts that they're going to be casting, and maybe they'll think of me for something else. So, anyhow, I just view it as an opportunity to play. Look, it's a Thursday afternoon. I get a chance to act for a couple of minutes. That's a lot of fun, and it gives me an opportunity to basically make a small deposit at the bank. And at some point, hopefully, if that money stays there, it's going to continue to grow and grow and grow. And that's how I view the audition. So, you got to be thinking long-term investment, not short-term, big hit.
Now, if how somebody auditions for a role and gets the part in the movie, can that person get well, what I'm trying to say is uh,
Proposed?
if somebody auditions for a role, can that director pass their info on to another director and so forth, and so they get more roles?
Oh, yeah. Well, what's going to happen is, especially depending on how big the film is, people see it.
Yeah,
People are going to watch your performance. There are a lot of people who work that way, and they're in one project, people notice it, and then they think, "Oh yeah, I want that person in my project." And then somebody else sees something. So, yeah, good work spreads very, very quickly. And the same holds true with negative stuff too. If you have a director, who says, "Oh, this person was impossible to work with. I will never work with this person again." That stuff spreads too. So that's why, like I was saying earlier, you always want to be professional.
absolutely. Now, can you talk about your program?
Yeah, so I've got a couple of different things. One is it's the actor career program, and it's really incredible. I wanted to make sure, like I realize finances are always tough for a lot of people, and I used to charge $495 for the year. And I'll tell you what the program includes in a second. This year for 2026, and we just started it a couple days ago, I decided I wanted to make sure that money was not a factor for anybody. And so essentially, you will pay $10 a month for the entire year. So every month, your credit card will get charged $10. And as soon as the 12-month hits, it stops charging. Or if somebody wants to pay the 120 upfront, there's a way to do that as well. So in this program, what I do is every month, members can attend my workshop free. So in January, we had a workshop and it was how to figure out your type, which is crucial information for actors. You need to know not how you think you should get booked, but how people view you. And in February, it's going to be happening really soon. It's going to be all about how to prepare before meeting an agent. And once again, this is something that I certainly didn't know about when I first started. I mean, how would I? Didn't have the experience. And so every month it's going to be an incredible workshop that you can attend free. If you can't attend it live, doesn't matter. I will send you a link of the recording. Also, it's like $3,100 worth of bonus materials, everything from a free 30-minute private session with me. You will get a link for over 1,100 industry contacts. There's just all these extra videos that you're going to get. It's just a tremendous amount of information, and this stuff will be invaluable. Things that you might, if you do learn these things, it's going to take you years and years and years. Here, you get it for $10 a month. So yeah, if you go to my website, you can click on, and it's howtoactandmodel.com. Just click on the actor career program, and it'll take you right to the landing page. You can read all about it, get all the benefits, see all the bonus materials, and sign up. And you should sign up as soon as you can. And then that way you can join us for our next workshop. And if you missed any, you can always go back and see the recordings as well.
Yeah, and also when this goes, it's all the information will be in the description as well
Oh,
of the
great.
podcast. Yeah,
Great. And just to let people know, if people are interested in doing private mentoring, I say 5 days every month. And once again, you can get that link, I guess, from the website here, from the podcast. And I have different programs. You can do an hour, 2 hour program, whatever is best for you. And I will work with you one on one. If you have some specific things that you want to discuss, great. I've got some ideas depending on where you're at. I'll ask you some questions and it will be just an invaluable source for you. And I also have a book, How to Become a Successful Actor and Model. And that book, it has just helped hundreds and hundreds of people have success.
and where can people get the book at? Is it on Amazon?
Yeah, so you can do it two ways. You can go to my website, howtoactamodel.com, click on the book. You can order it there, and you will also get a couple special directories as bonuses. You can get it at Amazon as well, and just search for how to become a successful actor and model, and you can order it there as well. But you don't get the bonuses if you get it at Amazon.
All right, now I got a few more questions for you, if you
Okay.
don't mind.
Uh-oh. You're getting me nervous here. Is this going to be an essay or multiple choice at least?
Well, and one of the questions is, and do you think social media helps or hurts actors that's trying to break in?
Yeah. So, and that, I tell you, I don't know how you came up with these questions, but they're really good. And nobody's ever asked me a lot of these questions. Look, social media, if used properly, it can be incredibly helpful for actors. Social media can also ruin a career if you don't know how to use it wisely. So, like for instance, there are people who are found on Instagram, on TikTok, on I guess somewhat Facebook, but probably more Instagram and TikTok. And if you have you've got scenes up there that you've done, or you've got some interesting videos that you've put together. Yeah, it can be incredibly helpful. And I can also tell you that sometimes, especially for larger parts, sometimes people at production companies, before they have you sign a contract, they will do essentially like a background check and they will check out your social media listings and postings. And, if you've got crazy stuff on there that's unprofessional and makes you look bad, or you're saying things that you shouldn't be saying, that can really hurt your career. So, it's an amazing tool that can really help you tremendously, but you just have to know how to use it wisely.
Now, if you could give one piece of advice and to your younger self, and what would it be?
Oh boy. Well, number one, because this took me years, don't take things personally. Number two, understand you don't have to love everybody you're working with. Number three, sometimes people will say things to you that just aren't true. And what I mean by that is I remember when I first decided to go to New York, and some people, it's not something I would just bring up. That's not what I do. Like, I don't go to a party and say, "Hey, by the way, hey guys, hey, I'm an actor. I just work with Tom Hanks." It's just not my style. I typically I've got neighbors who have no idea what I do. I just don't talk about it. If they ask me, "What do you do for a living?" I mean, I'll tell them, but I don't make announcements and stuff. Um, and I do remember that there were some people who said, "Aaron, don't go to New York. I'm telling you, you're going to get your heart broken." Look, they already have millions of actors who go into New York every single day. You really think they need somebody from Baltimore? I'm telling you, it's going to be impossible. It's not going to work out, and you're going to just feel broken and horrible about it. And I thank them for being so concerned about my cardiac situation here. Um, But what I learned, and I guess this is something I would have told myself because it took me a little while to figure this out, is that they didn't care about me getting my heart broken. These people, they were jealous and they did not want to see other people succeed at doing something that they didn't have the courage to do. So, so I guess for my younger self and for everybody else out here, for those of you who might be pursuing anything, whether it's acting or anything in this world that might be a little bit different, and people say, don't do it. I'm not saying don't listen to people. Maybe there is a good reason why you shouldn't be doing something. Maybe, you need to just kind of dip your toes in the water first and see, is this something that's right for you? Is this something that can make you happy, something that you can sustain your life with? But be careful because there are a lot of people out there who do not want to see other people succeed because they just don't have the courage to do it themselves.
Now, Howard, what keeps you excited about acting?
The process, um, getting a chance to audition, even though, and look, things are slower now in the industry, and it's not just for me, it's the entire industry. So I'm not auditioning as much as I used to, but getting a chance to audition, that's fun. You get a chance to play another character, uh, actually working. Look, I had a job just recently, and it was for a senior center, for a senior living center. And they have these big developments, and seniors move into these places, and they have their own townhouses and stuff. And about 5 years ago, I did a job for this. It's so funny. You were just talking about getting repeat business or working, multiple times. It was the same company, and I was a doctor who went into one of their places and just examining, some of the people living there. Recently, I was one of the people living there. I wasn't the doctor anymore. And it was so much fun, just getting a chance to portray this guy. And there were no lines because it was a still picture. And there were about, I don't know, maybe 10, 12 of us who were all either living there or maybe they were people helping people who live there and stuff like that. But yeah, doing the work itself. But I'll tell you something that really, it always has and still makes me so excited about things. And that's being able to help other people and share information and have people avoid some of the mistakes that I made along the way. And that's why I have given so many workshops and mentored, so many people, because it really, I know there are scams out there. I know there are people who try to rip people off. I don't know how these people live with themselves, how they go back to their houses at night with their families, knowing that they just ruin some people's lives by stealing money from them and also getting to a point where these people were hurt so badly trying to break into the industry, they decided to give up. So being able to share information and really help people, that gives me a tremendous amount of enjoyment.
Now, for people who are trying to get into the acting business and they don't have an agent, and if they live in a small town, and where do they start?
Yeah, so, well, besides getting in touch with somebody like me to really guide them, but here are some of the basic things. Look, you need a headshot, and and that's a whole workshop all into itself. But you need a photo, and not just a selfie, but you need a photo that looks professional. Doesn't have to be, you don't necessarily have to pay a professional if you know what goes into putting together a great headshot, but you need something to submit to agents. Although, let me just back up for a second. There are ways you can actually try to get work on your own, even if you don't have an agent. I highly recommend you get one, but you could contact advertising agencies that are in your area. You could go to some Facebook groups to see if there are filmmakers in the area. There's a organization, it's called meetup.com, and you can see if there are any filmmaking or TV commercial groups in your area. You can try to do student films. contact any community college or university, see if they have filmmaking classes where students actually have to shoot films for the class and ask to audition, if you have the skills to do that. And maybe you can work on a student film. There are lots of ways that you can get started, even in a small town. And then eventually, yeah, then you want a headshot, you want to put together a resume. And I know people will say, well, I've never done any acting. How can I put together a resume? What do I send to get, send out a regular, business resume? No, you don't. Once again, these are things that I help people with, but yeah, you can put a lot of information into a resume, an acting resume, even with no experience. Things like you've got a name, you've got, some statistics, your height, your weight, eye color, hair color, contact information. And here's probably the best thing. Either if you've taken any acting classes, put that in the resume, or if you have some special skills. Are you a mechanic? Are you a professional guitarist? Do you speak a foreign language? Do you do martial arts? Are you a dancer? Do you play an instrument? Putting in those special skills can be incredibly helpful. Matter of fact, I was just working with somebody today, and this guy lives in the other part of the country, and he's fluent. He's born here, so he speaks English, but he's fluent in Arabic. I said, "Man, you got to put that on your resume. That's an amazing skill to have. Who knows? Maybe there's a character on a TV show or a film where the person has to be able to speak Arabic." So yeah, sometimes those special skills can be invaluable. And then get out there and start trying to make connections. Now, you want to make sure you know how to act. There are some people who are just born with certain instincts and they're just phenomenal at it, but it's so rare. It really is. And even if you had, like when I first started, I hadn't taken any classes and I was getting work. So apparently I had some kind of ability, but I learned pretty quickly if I really wanted to pursue this, especially on a full-time basis, I've got to start studying because maybe I'm not feeling something that one particular moment. How do I do that? How do I analyze a script? What do I do? Where do I look? If I'm shooting a self-tape. There's just so much that you really need to learn. So it's like any other business. Make sure you're really good at it, you understand it, get the right materials together. Yes, absolutely. Trying to find an agent will be really, really helpful. But yeah, you can try to start doing some things. But one other idea. So most states have a film commission office. So go to the film commission website of your state. And typically, if there are projects happening there, they'll list them. And maybe you'll find there's a movie coming to town and there's an extras casting director and see if you can do some extra work on a feature film or a television show or a TV commercial. It will be a great experience and you'll get paid something for it, but more importantly, you'll get a chance to watch and see how things are actually put together. You can network with other extras. You can find out about agents in your area. You can find out about headshot photographers or classes in your area. So just get out there and do it.
Now, and what if people that's watching wants to be an actor, but they have a hard time of remembering their lines, like for a movie or a TV show?
Yeah. So, so funny you mentioned that. Monday night, and I know this is going to be shown afterwards, but I'm doing a workshop, 13 ways to memorize your lines that work. And there are lots of different techniques to use. So, for people who say, "Oh, I can't memorize things," um, well, maybe you're not using the right technique. And you know what? I'll give people one right now, and they can play with it. And do me a favor, let me know if this works for you. So one technique that can work, and I don't understand it, but there are a lot of things in this world I don't understand, but they work. For this one, try singing your lines. Just take one sentence and sing it. You can either make up a melody or use a melody from a song that you know. And it's crazy how there are songs that we might have heard a decade ago, and we still remember the words to the
Yeah.
song. And I will use this technique if not all the time, every once in a while, but if I have to do say a lot of legalese or medical terms, things that just don't flow very easily for me, sometimes I'll practice it by singing it. And then it gets in my head. And a way that I test myself to see if I really have it, and this is another technique, is try doing some kind of task that you have to think about. Maybe it's folding laundry. So you've got laundry, you're putting it on the bed, you're folding it up, and do your lines as you're doing another activity. If you can do the other activity and still get your lines out, you got it. So, anyhow, really quick thing. There are ways that you can learn how to do that.
All right. Oh, it's before we wrap up the podcast, which I always ask my guests if they have any closing thoughts on for the people that's listening. And and do you get any closing thoughts for the people out there? For the people out in YouTube land.
Yeah. So, just a couple really quick things. Once again, if there's something out there that interests you, get the information, listen to what people say, filter it, but follow your heart. Because the saddest thing for me is when I hear people tell me, I've always wanted to, and in my case, I've always wanted to be an actor or a model, but either I was in school and then I got married and I had kids and now, I'm not in a place where I can do it. I'm working. Look, don't ever get to a point where you're always wondering what if. Just like when I first started going to New York, I knew that I could live with not getting an agent in New York. I knew that I could live with not getting any work in New York. I wouldn't have been happy. I could live with that. What I couldn't live with was not giving it a try because I knew that I would have nightmares every time I saw a feature film or a network television show or, well, at that time, network television show or a national TV commercial. I would always be wondering, I wonder if I could have done that. That's what I couldn't live with. So follow your heart with things. Look, be smart about it, but follow your heart. And for people who say, "Oh, I'm too old to do," you're not too old to do. If you're breathing, you can do it because there are different kinds of jobs for people of all ages out there. So, yeah, don't let other people turn you away from doing something that you really want to do.
All right, Aaron. Oh, I appreciate you coming on the podcast. I had a great time. I hope I didn't keep you too long.
Oh man, this was great. I'm telling you, you asked great questions.
Thanks, I appreciate it. All right, and that wraps up today's episode of Conversations with Jacob. Make sure to tune in next week for a brand new interview. Until then, God bless. God bless, and I'll catch you guys next week.